Hello and welcome to Perspectives in Professional Psychology. I'm Dr. Lance Garrison, Dean of the College of Professional Psychology at the Chicago School. Join me as we explore the cutting-edge work of our faculty, alumni, and students across a diverse array of specialty within the fields of professional psychology. In today's episode of Perspectives in Professional Psychology, I'm joined by Dr. Jim Iaccino. Dr. Iaccino obtained his master's and PhD in experimental psychology from DePaul University. He joined the Chicago School in 2007 and is currently an associate professor in the online forensic psychology department. As a teaching psychologist, Dr. Iaccino tries to stay up to date with research in the forensic literature and media, and his research interests and areas of expertise reflect this. Since the 1990s, Dr. Iaccino has done extensive research on Jungian archetypes in film, has co-authored or co-edited 3 seminal texts on the subject, and delivered multiple presentations at annual Popular Culture Association conferences. Dr. Iaccino has extended his film research into the forensic field, specifically by investigating serial killers within the cinema. He's recently developed the Cinematic Serial Killers Research Project, and has involved online forensic psychology students in the coding of films that showcase the depiction of real-life offenders. Through that work, Dr. Iaccino has found striking correlations between the demographic characteristics of these figures and their actual counterparts, including their gender, their age, typology, being driven by a variety of motives, as well as choosing a more common victim type. He's presented these findings at annual American Psychological Association conventions and biannual forensic psychology residencies at the Chicago School. He's further published a number of serial killer film reviews in the APA journal Psych Critiques. Because of his numerous contributions to Psych Critiques, Dr. Iaccino joined their editorial board from 2015 to 2018. Currently, he is a manuscript reviewer for the Journal of Popular Culture and has become a member of their editorial advising board. Dr. Iaccino has developed and teaches specialized courses within our online forensic psychology department that reflect his areas of interest, including understanding serial killers, biological bases of behavior, and psychopharmacology. Dr. Iaccino is a fascinating psychologist, and I hope you enjoy our conversation about his Cinematic Serial Killers project. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Perspectives in Professional Psychology. We are very fortunate today to have with us a faculty member from our online division, Dr. Jim Iaccino. And so welcome, Dr. Iaccino. Thank you for joining us today.
Sure thing.
Maybe let's get started with telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, some of your professional interests, and what you do at the Chicago School.
Okay, well, my area is experimental psychology. I received both my master's and PhD at DePaul University in Chicago. And I've been associated with the Chicago School for the past 17 years. First with the on-ground Chicago campus with their forensic program, and the last 7 years full-time with the online forensic psychology program.
Fantastic. So I know you wrote an article for us recently for our online edition of Insights, and it was around serial killers and a project that you had going there. Can you tell us a little bit about what got you interested in work with serial killers?
Okay, well, I've always been fascinated with this type of offender, and the plethora of films over the past 20 years. Some researchers indicate that there are over 500 plus films in the United States alone focusing on serial killers. But as I delved into this further, I found that the FBI's current definition of serial killer is that they comprise less than 1% of all homicides in the United States. So currently we have something like 17,000 homicides a year. 1% is approximately 170. So they're not in as great an abundance as the popular culture media would have us believe. And so I really was fascinated by this disconnect
Mm.
between the popularity of serial killers in the media and yet the accuracy of them in real life, and how low that number, what less than 1%, really is, that can be attributed to serial killers for homicides each year.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I really appreciated what a small percentage of the homicides were accounted for by serial killers. Yet when that happens, they grab so much media attention, they headlines everywhere. And to your point, there's some sort of national obsession with it, right? With homicide and killers and serial killers in particular. 500 movies about serial killers is quite a lot given the relative, proportion of homicides accounted for by them in the population.
I agree. And I think what the media does is it focuses on those that kill 10, 20, 30 individuals.
Yeah.
So they look at the outliers when really most serial killers kill a couple of individuals before they are apprehended.
Oh,
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Is there an average? I mean, what actually defines a
Okay.
serial killer?
The FBI changed the number of kills back in 2008 and indicated that previously they said 3 or more kills
Mhm.
by the same offender defines a serial killer. They changed it to 2 or more kills. So I think even the name serial killer is not accurate,
Right,
because if it's just 2 or more kills, they're not leaving a string, a trail, a chain of bodies all
right.
over the place. So we might need to change that label, but it's so ingrained in our culture now. I
Yeah.
don't think we ever will.
Yeah, I don't think when I think about serial killer, what comes to mind is someone over a period of months or years, maybe even decades, engaging in a pattern of kind of intentional planned homicide along a theme. That's kind of
Yes,
always been my conceptualization of a serial killer.
right. Same here. Same here. And that's why I think the media really focuses on those that kill a good number of individuals, because
Yeah,
then that reinforces their view of what serial killing is.
yeah.
Numbers of kills by the same person over time, as you indicated.
Well, maybe tell us a little bit about some of the elements of your cinematic serial killers project.
Okay. It started in 2020 in the online forensic program,
Mhm.
where I sought out student volunteers. Uh, they are not paid to do this. It's mainly an interest on their part. And what I do is I divide them up into pairs, and I assign them a film, a serial killer film based on a real life offender.
Mhm.
I have each individual in the pair first review the film independently of the other person, and then they meet with the other person and agree to a coding of the serial killers. I have a survey that I developed back in 2017, 2018 on the characteristics of serial killers. And what they then do is agree to the rating on each item on that survey. And from there, then they send it back to me with comments and things like that. And that's how we proceed with the film coding of these serial killers. And right now, we have had 76 films coded with the hopes of really getting to at least 100 films in the
Okay.
next year or two.
And what are some of the things that these students are coding for
Okay,
in the film?
uh, good question. Uh, Besides demographics like age depicted in the film, gender, um, things like number of kills, they also code by motive, what in really drives the person to
Mhm.
kill, the methods of kill. Do they use a gun, a knife, poison, or some other means? What victim types are they looking for? Are they strangers or are they acquaintances, family members? Which gender of the victim, what age of the victim. So it gets you a snapshot, if you will, of a profile
Mhm.
of that serial killer with those characteristics. And then what they do finally is they get information that either I supply or they find on that serial killer, and they compare what's depicted in the film to that actual offender to see if it's an accurate portrayal. And I got it divided up into 4 categories: not at all accurate,
Mhm.
somewhat accurate, uh, very, very accurate, completely accurate. And so from there, I assess then the accuracy of the film
Yeah.
with the real life offender.
Almost a measure of how much license, kind of creative license, the production companies took as they tried to tell these stories to the broader population.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And some films they take more creative license than others.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say one of the findings is that most of the portrayals are somewhat accurate portrayals. They hit the mark on some things, but not everything.
Sure.
So the films are valuable because they are imparting information to the general public
Yeah.
about who a serial killer is, what drives them. And so there is some accuracy there, but there's also some mistakes too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Hollywood's been known for that from time to time.
right. I
Yeah.
think one of the best serial killer portrayals was Monster, that was done in 2002. That was a very good film, and it did accurately portray the killer, Eileen Wuornos,
Yes.
as well as her victims too. That was a very accurate portrayal.
And and an incredible performance by
Oh,
Charlize Theron, I
thank you.
believe, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. They even got her in makeup to look exactly like Wuornos.
Yeah.
So it was great. I think it was nominated for an award too.
I believe so. I
Hmm.
believe so.
Right.
So this is such an interesting project. Could you talk a little bit about relevance of the project within, the broader field of psychology?
Sure. Um, when I was presenting our first findings on the project at an APA convention and a
Mhm.
poster session, uh, one of the individuals uh, basically said, well, this is really informative. I would never have guessed that these films are portraying somewhat accurate depictions of these offenders. And I got more surprises than anything else because people think, well, if it's something based on Hollywood, it's more the horrific elements. They're not focusing on the individual killer themselves. And so I believe one of the aspects of relevancy of this project is that they are depicting some things accurately. And it is important to understand how the public is perceiving this offender. Uh, they still think, in some regards, that, oh, they must kill 10, 20, 30 individuals.
Mhm.
And so the usefulness of this in psychology is to impart what is accurate versus what is not accurate.
Yeah.
Most serial killers today kill less than 5 victims. Now, that doesn't mean you won't get the outlier or something like that. But in the 70s and the 80s, there was more an upswing in those type of killers like Gacy, like Dahmer.
Yeah.
Uh, and now today, we're getting more accurate with our profiling techniques so we can stop them before they do leave that trail of bodies. So another thing is that we have refined our profiling techniques in such a way that we can capture them after the second or the third kill so that they don't continue
Yeah.
killing. And I think that's an important point to bring up too. If our profiling techniques did not advance with the times, I think we still would be having those, what they say, prolific killers, those that kill so many individuals. So it's really learning about what is being presented, what is accurate versus what is not accurate. And that is part of the educational process
Yeah.
toward this offender. And I find that our forensic students really gravitate toward serial killers. They really want to understand what makes them tick. So I did not have to find uh, uh, these volunteers. They gladly wanted to participate in the project. And I think that's what really compels people to understand these type of individuals more.
Yeah, I think having a grounded understanding is important, right? Separating wherever we can fact from fiction so that we have that grounded understanding. So we know what's real, what's not real, what's sensationalized, what's not sensationalized. But you said something that was interesting to
Sure.
me that that I want to ask a little bit more about. Well, a couple things actually.
Okay.
With the prevalence of serial killers or serial killings going down since the 80s, you mentioned that you thought that a lot of that was due to just better investigative profiling techniques. So it's kind of hard to hide these days, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
Yes.
possible, but it's much, much more difficult. So is it policing techniques? Is it the forensic techniques, profiling that's driving that down? Or is there also some combination of that with just a decrease in violent crime altogether?
I think it's more the former than the latter.
Okay.
And it's more the FBI not really identifying these people, but local law enforcement. They're
Okay.
they're getting more uh, refined in terms of identifying who these individuals are. I
Mhm.
think still crime is going up in our country, but as far as serial killing goes, it's not as prevalent as it once was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and the other part of this too, it's interesting because I think a lot of um, people are drawn into or drawn to or feel interested in that forensic world,
Mhm.
serial killers in particular. And I have some thoughts about why that might be, but I'm curious what kind of insight you might have about why students get drawn into a project like this. I mean, it's a fascinating project, and it sounds like that it's both probably fun if you can say
Mhm.
coding serial killer movies might be fun, but there's kind of a fun aspect to it. But I think there's maybe something more primal going on around people's fascination with this type of thing. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think with serial killing, it's seen as an oddity, not the, hate to use the term normal,
Hmm.
but it's the same like with those in the forensic field are interested in sexual offenders too. They're drawn to this because it is so outside of their own purview, but yet they want to understand what is motivating a person like a sexual offender to do that to someone? What is motivating a killer to kill more than once? And sure enough, it's understanding them and seeing that some come from troubled backgrounds,
Mhm.
from home environments where they have been either physically, psychologically, even sexually abused. And so understanding that, then some of the students can relate to it a little bit more because they may have some clients that have
Sure.
been exposed to
Yeah.
domestic violence or abuse at an early age. So by trying to put uh, an understandable element to it, it becomes less mysterious. So they want to learn
Yeah.
more about it. So it's acquisition of knowledge, I think, and to confirm some of the hunches that they may have.
Yeah. And I think that kind of circles back really nicely to the relevance to the field, right? The better we can understand it, given that, particularly in forensic settings, psychologists are working with people who may have that potential. So the better we are at kind of identifying those early indicators of potential for that type of behavior, the more effectively and earlier that we can intervene and keep that from happening.
I agree completely with that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And where I was going with it, Dr. Iaccino, was, as humans, we're hardwired for threat detection,
Mhm.
right? And these particularly sensational um, murders or serial killings really, I think, peak that threat detection tendency that we have. And so, kind of looking at that, being able to examine it from a safe distance, right, to get close to it, but do so in a way that doesn't increase threat is something that kind of pulls people in. It's a fascination that we have. How closely can I get to something that feels very threatening, that feels very dangerous, to try to understand it and maybe prevent myself from becoming a victim later down the road?
Oh, I agree with you completely. There's stations now, streaming channels, the ID channel, where they just have serial killer shows day in and day out. And it helps people, I think, in a way, understand these killers. And as you said, so that they may not become a victim or identify some triggers that, ooh, I don't want to relate to this person anymore, or I don't want to be dating them or married to them anymore because I
Right.
see what has happened in
Yeah.
real life to those individuals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very prevalent.
Well, I love this project. If I remember correctly, you're like three-quarters of the way, to your target of a
Right.
hundred films coded. Where do you want to take this project in the future? Where do you see it going?
Well, what I want to do first is develop, as I stated, a database that I can disseminate con- at conventions. But
Mhm.
eventually, if I get enough data, to develop writing a text on it, because
Oh yeah.
what I see right now, there are articles galore on fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter,
Mhm.
Norman Bates, that are based on real life killers. But I think my project, which is based on real life killers, not fictitious ones,
Mhm.
has the advantage that I see that other projects don't. So I would want to eventually get a text published or an edited work with individuals that would want to share comments like you have shared
Yeah.
and write papers in the text as well.
That would be fantastic, I think, and very well received. I'd be quite a popular book, I can imagine.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well,
thank
thank you. Oh, go ahead. Did you want to
I,
share
I
something?
I I just want to say thank you for all of the questions because I can see you're really intrigued by it, as most of the viewers will be, and I appreciate that you allowed me to share my views on this research.
Oh, it's been my pleasure, Dr. Iaccino. Thank you so much for joining us on Perspectives in Professional Psychology. And I can't wait to hear more as the project progresses and eventually turns into a great work product like a book.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison.
All right, take care. Thank you for joining us on Perspectives in Professional Psychology. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making a difference in your communities. If you would like more information about the professional psychology programs offered at the Chicago School, please visit us at thechicagoschool.edu.